So, who qualifies for PACE? Well, Andy already touched on this. You gotta be in a PACE district. Andy, why don't you talk a little bit about how do you become a PACE district? Or if you're a building owner and you don't know if there's PACE, or if you know there's PACE and man, I want to be in a PACE district.
Sure, Scott. So these, Scott has listed up here on the screen the 9 counties and 3 cities that have already joined our program. There are many more that are in the process, like Bay County is close to their final vote. Montcalm County is, in their process of going through it, and there are others. If you, let's say you own a building or you're working in this space as a partner with Scott, if you have a property that's already in one of these districts, boom, you're set. But if you have a property, a potential PACE project in a different county, no problem, because the main way we get the new counties to join is because of your property and your project. Because when you go with us to some county and say, oh, gee, I'd like to save, $30,000 a year on my property and put these number of people to work doing this project and do, $500,000 of economic development in your county, would you just do this weird thing that Levin's doing that he'll explain to you? They will do it. And out of the 12 local governments listed there that have already joined, and if you think politically, some of those are very rural, some are very urban, some are very conservative, some are very liberal. Doesn't matter. This is totally not, this is like bipartisan or apolitical or whatever. Out of them, what would that be, Scott? 120 city council people and county commissioners, there's been maybe 6 no votes. So we just keep it, it's pure business, it's pro-business, and I think the simple answer is if you got a project that's not, or a property that's not already in, we'll help you get it in, because our whole purpose in life is to help you do an energy efficiency project. That's the only reason we're doing this.
Here's another thing to touch on real quick too, Andy, for everybody here. Some of you in here may own properties outside of Michigan, all right? So today, there's 31 states plus the District of Columbia that are PACE districts. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can go there and do a project. Andy and I were looking at some projects in North Carolina. They've had PACE since 2009 at a state level. 0 projects. It hasn't even been adopted by a county or a city. Why? How many people in this room know when there's a law passed at the state level? They're not out marketing it. There's not a flyer that shows up in your CFO's office. Hey, PACE, man, go out and spend some money. So it's people like Andy and ourselves and our partners and hopefully all of you are out there promoting it. That's the only way. It is truly a grassroots effort. A little quick story, we got invited to a meeting in Royal Oak for a project there. They're in Oakland County, which isn't on board yet, and so of course Royal Oak wasn't. We meet with them, that was their first question. Hey, what do we need to do to get PACE? Well, pen and paper. Within 90 days, Andy? Royal Oak was a PACE district. So it works. Washtenaw County is another perfect example. Simon Properties, who owns the mall there, he's like, hey, either do it or I'm leaving. I didn't think he said that, but they use PACE primarily to do all their projects, right, Andy? They're one of the largest property holders or mall holders in the United States. So, more to come. But the last point I want to make on this too is that I think there are only, 9 states that actually have active PACE programs. As popular as this is, and that there's 31 states that have adopted it, there's just not a lot of activity. One of the things I want you to touch on, Andy, too, is why is Michigan different than probably 99% of the other ones out there, and why are we so successful compared to those?
Well, basically, the way I see it, there's sort of 3 ways PACE has happened in different states. It started in California And in California and Florida would be another example. There are many different PACE programs, PACE administrations. Even in the same jurisdiction, they overlap, and it's kind of a riot and a mess, to be honest with you. The other extreme is Connecticut, and it's only one state that's like this. And they passed an official state PACE program that's administered by the state, paid for by the state, run by the state, and they have a state green bank that finances your project up front, and then the PACE financing comes in and takes that out. Well, how many, Michigan isn't doing that. How many states are going to do that, like big government solution? So my idea essentially was, well, there's a lot of benefit in the Connecticut aspect of having one big efficient market that's uniform across the state, that a company like Scott's or many of yours, that, it's not like if you're based in Sterling Heights, you operate in Sterling Heights, or if you're based in Grand Rapids, you operate in Kent County. If you get a call from Ottawa County, or if you get a call from anywhere in the state, you're probably going, because you got to make money and you got to do volume of business. So our idea was create one big efficient market for the whole state, but not in a big government way, but in a market approach. So our company simply created this statewide PACE program, and we give it to any local government that wants to join for free. And then we create it for them, we run it for them. And like Scott said, we finance the whole PACE program on administrative fees on each project. So it's a market-oriented approach. It's probably the most market-oriented approach in the whole country. But, and really, look, LA County's economy may be close to as big as the whole state of Michigan. So you have to be careful on how you compare things. But if you look at as a percentage of a state, Michigan is by far the #1 state in a market-created, statewide, big, efficient PACE market. There's no other state that really approaches it. Texas is real, and there's a Saginaw girl, I'll call her, she's my age, but someone who Grand Rapids. Somebody who grew up in Grand Rapids, married a Buckeye. They're both lobbyists in Austin, Texas. Her name's Charlene Heidinger. She's trying to do the exact same thing we're doing here, Scott. One big, efficient market that's simple for businesses to be able to use all across the state.
Mm-hmm. And the other difference too is that a lot of the states are using bonds versus, it's pretty open. I mean, it's, hey, go find the money. And you can self-finance your own projects. Look, if you got the money and you want to do the project, but hey, why shouldn't I invest in my own building, pay myself interest, and I can move it over a 20-year period and have all these guarantees? Why not? So, okay. So, who qualifies for PACE? Of course, the business has to be in good standing. It can't be filing bankrupt. And from a market standpoint, look, when the financer comes in, again, they're not pulling a credit report and all that type of stuff, but the financer is still going to come up, look at the business, make sure that you got a decent business model. You're going to be in business for 10, 20 years. Now, if you go bankrupt, yeah, they're going to get their money, because when they sell the building, first thing that comes out is property tax. But that building might not be sold for 4 or 5 years. And as we see in this state, it might be 10 years before it gets sold. So, that's part of it. So they want to make sure that they're investing in a good business. Property can't be leveraged. I mean, back in 2008, you could borrow 150% of the value of your property. Those days are done, by the way, I think. But anyways, it can't be leveraged. Bogey is 80% typically, around there. They're going to look at it case by case basis, but that's kind of what the bogey is. Projects have to be over $250,000. Why? Because there's costs involved. The smaller the project, that fee that we're paying to the attorneys to take care of it, they don't look at the size of the project, they look at the hours that they're putting into it. So, we're going to use up a lot of that savings paying all the fees to make it work, so the bogey is 250. However, we've had some discussions with Comerica. They've come on board and said, yeah, we would be interested in doing some smaller projects, but honestly, most of the projects are a lot bigger than 250. It hasn't been really an issue. Can only be used for energy efficient projects, but, and there's a big but here. Look, in the end, it is a project. They're not looking at individual technologies. You know, they're not saying, oh, well, hey, you can't do high-speed doors because you're just not going to save a lot of money. It's by project. So lighting and heating and cooling, they're your big hogs, all right? Well, I'm going to borrow a little of the savings from the lighting and kind of apply it to some other technology that maybe just doesn't pencil out on its own. Or if there's some other building upgrades that really need to be done, well, you just kind of put them into the project because, again, it's the entire project, okay? That's what they're looking at. Now, we give them all the data. I mean, it's you know, analysis paralysis when we get done with it. But again, they're just looking at the final numbers, and you guys will see the financials for the Star Lincoln, so you can kind of see what it looks like. And then finally, if you're a tenant and you don't own the building, well, go get permission to do it. All right? Although the building owner has to approve it, it doesn't mean that you as a tenant can't get him motivated to do that. And you pointed that out on my little cheat sheet. That's what I was talking about as far as, you know, we work with clients, their business model, we don't own anything. You know, we're working with a Canadian-based company that has 20 facilities in the US. They own none of them. That is their business model. But yet, they're interested in solar, combined heat and power, geothermal. All right, well, let's do PACE. You just have to, quote, get a sign off from the building owner, and solar is one of the bigger projects that we're going to be doing with them right now. So what projects qualify for? Better yet, what projects don't? So Kurt, I was going to ask you a little bit about this. You know, look, we got a lot of, quote, tools in our bag. You know, what are we looking at? What should they be looking at in regards to PACE?
Really, in a nutshell, the vast majority of energy efficiency projects would qualify for PACE. This could be the building envelope, the caulking, weather stripping, windows, doors. Scott mentioned the HVAC and lighting. These are two of the big components. Obviously, they qualify. More efficient use of water will also qualify for a PACE project. And then also Scott mentioned solar, wind, geothermal. They all qualify for PACE. The two areas that do not qualify for PACE, at least in the state of Michigan, are incinerators and digesters. Incinerators may be a little more understandable why it may not qualify. In digesters, I believe, Andy, you mentioned that is on the hit list as far as getting approved for the state. So again, it cuts a very, very wide swath what you can use for PACE. I think a key thing, though, is to keep in mind, you know, Scott mentioned all the different types of energy upgrades that you can look at. Now, many of us, you know, we may be a company that focuses on a particular technology or product. Well, when you're looking at $250,000 projects and up, in many cases, you're going to have to collaborate with other folks, and you know, it might be a little different for, you know, the typical mindset that we have. So you need to get to know some of the other people. For example, in Star Lincoln, we're putting in lighting, energy efficient lighting. There's a new compressed air system going in, high-speed garage doors, and there's a new heating system. So really, and many times, the more arrows you can have in your quiver, the more successful you're going to be at meeting that threshold for PACE financing. And again, with the 20-year outlook period, our financing term, that's going to give you an opportunity to generate enough of the energy savings that it's going to more than offset the cost of the project. That's labor, that's materials, that's the financing cost. So the key is, you know, collaboration on many of these projects will really make the difference.